Okay, let's try this again, hopefully with no interruptions. The last attempt, I got interrupted by a phone call from San Bernardino. Nobody left a message either. It must have been a prank call. But anyway, let's kind of get back to what we were talking about here, guys. So yeah, it's been a year since Stripes and Links. Stripes and Links, that's Links, Stripes and Links, basically came out on SabrinaOnline.com and Eric W. Short's Patreon page. And for those of you that have been wondering what that series is or what that story is, when it comes to Sabrina Online, and why I've been reviewing it. Well, long story short, it's a storyline centered around Zigzag, who is a character originally created by Max Black Rabbit, and Sabrina's mom, Endora. Because what happened is basically at the beginning of the story, Endora and Zigzag are out having a ladies' night out, just a girls' night out at the bar, drinking, talking the jizz, if you will, or just basically catching up and seeing how each other are doing. And what happens is the conversation leads to Endora asking about, whether or not she could still be viewed as, as attractive, that, beautiful and, stuff like of that nature. And Zigzag's like, yeah, of course, you're still hot. You're still one hot woman. There's no doubt you're very attractive, And you got to realize both have had probably a little bit too much to drink. Probably, Zigzag a little bit more than Endora. And Endora is Sabrina's mom, by the way. So what happens is during this conversation, and Zigzag's giving all these nice answers to Endora about, yeah, you're still attractive, you're still hot, and all that. Zigzag ends up committing the cardinal sin that you're not supposed to do. She ends up kissing Endora on the lips. But what's interesting about this, though, is when Zigzag used to do that at times to Sabrina, whether it's, kind of welcomed, not kind of welcomed, and all that, Zigzag would kind of push off a little bit. Well, not Zigzag, but Sabrina, I should say. Sabrina would kind of push off a little bit. And, it was even demonstrated later on when Zigzag had to explain to Sabrina what happened. She had to, visually demonstrate it to her. And Sabrina's reaction was basically what Zigzag was originally expecting from Endora. But what happened, though, is that she didn't get that kind of reaction. Instead, she ended up getting a reaction from Endora that was stunned shock. Stunned, silence, shock. And it got to the point that Endora left, didn't even take the offer from Zigzag to, grab an Uber or wait for Tina to pick them up. Tina Links, that is, who is Zigzag's bisexual lover, if you will. And long story short, Endora's husband finds out about this and everything. And basically, Sabrina finds out, and Sabrina wants to know what happened. Zigzag knows what's going to occur. The wrath she's going to face from Sabrina because Sabrina trusts her and vice versa. So again, that's when Zigzag has to explain and visually, give an example of the kind of reaction she was expecting from Endora and not the one she got, which led, Sabrina to basically be like, okay, I believe you and everything because, because basically Sabrina knows Zigzag would never lie to her. Zigzag is, Zigzag might have her, issues at times, might have her problems and habits that she has to work on. But she is the kind that basically, when she becomes your friend, your colleague, kind of like family, she's the kind that you can look her straight in the eye, you can look her straight in the eyes, if you will, and realize that she's telling the truth. I mean, it's kind of like, let's say you go back and you watch, let's say, Robin Hood. You have that scene with Maid Marian in Robin Hood. It's the 1970s Disney animated classic. You have that scene of them, right? And you have that zoom in, that kind of like slow pan in zoom or close up, of their eyes, mostly Maid Marian's eyes. And that's kind of how you could visualize Sabrina knowing Zigzag's telling her the truth, because Zigzag's going to look her straight in the eyes and basically, let her know, hey, I'm not lying to you. I'm not, pulling your string or pulling your tail. So Sabrina believes her. She's like, okay, fine, I get it. I get it. I believe you. I'm going to try to find some answers. And at first, she can't get the answers because her mom doesn't want to, talk about it. She doesn't want to say anything about it. And it takes Sabrina's husband, Richard, RC, as he's become known, RC, to basically tell her, hey, you know what my family does to get a conversation going about something nobody wants to talk about? We just talk about it around food. We bring in a little dessert, like an ice cream or an apple pie or whatever, and we just talk. We just start in a slow, regular conversation, and we just go from there. We just take our time. We're calm, cool, and collective about it. And Sabrina's like, hey, that's not a bad idea. I might have to look into that. And that's exactly what she does. She takes her husband's advice. In this recent edition that started with page 50, and she is, currently in this act, if you will, this part of the story, getting some answers from her mom. She's not being like aggressive about it, saying, hey, what's this, what's that? She's trying to get some answers. And the answers she's getting, and we as the readers and viewers are getting, is really intriguing. Now, as far as Zigzag goes, she has been on a mission, she's been on a mission to basically find some answers herself. She wants to basically know, why does she act the way she does? Why does she act the way she does? She wants some answers. So what does she do? She leaves Sabrina in charge of the studio, and she goes along with her bisexual lover, Tina Lynx. They go cross country, to go find out exactly what happened. And I guess to kind of keep a low profile, Zigzag kind of puts on a disguise, or at least some different kind of clothing, so that, she doesn't draw any attention. And for a bit it does, and for a while it does work. There's even a scene where she's trying to test it out and everything at a gas station, kind of a food mart gas station they stop at, and they don't recognize her, under that disguise. They don't recognize her. So basically, she's able to, go about her business without anybody, recognizing her and asking for an autograph, or even asking for a little, kind of, moments, if you know what I mean. Anyway, basically she and Tina are going on this trip, and one of the first stops they do, when it comes to trying to get some answers, is basically they stop at a hotel to rest, of course, and they do have a little fun, which, if we know Eric W. Shorts, he might consider putting into a side story, For After Dark story, if you will. That might go into more Tales from For After Dark book in the future. Because, like I said, if we know Eric, he might take them having their little fun when they're at the hotels and make it into a little side story for the main story. He did that basically when Zigzag was on the hunt for the trolls that were trolling her on the internet, when Sabrina introduced her and her colleagues, her team at Double Z Studios, introduced them to the World Wide Web and what they could do, like, through, chat messaging, Discord message boards, Discord, stuff like that. And in this one story, it was kind of a side plot. Zigzag's going on this, I guess you could say, cross-town mission. I wouldn't say it's cross-country or anything, but she's just going across, the region to find these trolls, because obviously they're local and everything to where she works, kind of in the vicinity. And what Eric W. Shorts did is he ended up creating a side story based around this. It's basically Zigzag telling Sabrina in a flashback about, how she met this one woman of one of the trolls. And this one woman was, of course, the character known as Helena Dish. That's right, Helena Dish got introduced full length, I guess you could say, in the story called Adventure Begins at Home. That's basically how she got introduced, I guess you could say. And, long story short, what happens in this is exactly what I could see happening if Eric decides, hey, I want to do a side story with Tina Lynx and Zigzag getting it on at the hotels they stay at, while they're going on this journey. This kind of Thelma, I wouldn't say Thelma and Louise-like journey, but still this journey of discovery to kind of get some answers for Zigzag as to, why she acts the way she does and everything. So I could see him doing something like that. I could also see him doing something else as well for a kind of like epilogue-like story at Far After Dark, but I'll get into that in a moment. Because I've been on about that, time and time again. I've been on about that time and time again when it comes to the story. But anyway, yeah, they go on this journey, this cross-country journey back to, Sabrina, not Sabrina, but back to Zigzag's roots, back to her hometown, her home county, if you will, home state, to get some answers. And the first family members we meet are her siblings, Brandy and Brandon. And Brandy, she's more happy to see her sister than Brandon, who's a little hostile. And then we get to meet the grandparents, and we kind of see where Sabrina, well, not Sabrina, but Zigzag, I'm getting my words tied up here, I do apologize. But we kind of see when we meet the grandparents, we kind of see where, Zigzag gets that, I guess you could say, tiger aggressiveness, because what Zigzag is she's part tiger, part skunk. That's what she is. So she's a tiger skunk. And we kind of see, where she might get a bit of that tiger blood and predatorialness and, strength and all that. We kind of see maybe she gets it from the grandfather. And the grandfather, I also think we kind of get an idea that he has an idea, not the grandmother. The grandmother, she's portrayed as a sweet thing. She's portrayed as somebody that, if you need a fresh, hot cooked meal, she will be on that stove cooking, preparing it, and bringing it to you within an hour, maybe even less. But anyway, though, like I said, she has no idea what, Zigzag does for a living, but it's implied that the grandfather knows. But, the reason this is implied that the grandfather knows and the grandmother doesn't is because the grandmother, when she finds out exactly what Tina and Zigzag's relationship is, it kind of surprises her because she's thinking, wait a minute, you mean pansexual, like in Pam spray, for, you put on your pants and all that? And Zigzag's like, no, not really, because, and the reason for this is because when the grandparents came over, Tina was waiting outside for Zigzag, and they just brought her in and said, hey, we found this little friend of yours outside. Is this somebody you know? And because the grandparents are just coming over to routinely, obviously, check in on the grandkids, see how they're doing, because they're living on their own. They have no father, they have no mother, because of reasons. And they're living on their own, they're taking care of each other. And the grandparents come over to check in on them. And when they come this time around, basically they see Tina waiting outside. They bring her in and wondering if this is somebody they know. And then that's when they see that Zigzag is there. And then that's when we find out that Zigzag's real name is Tanya. But that she legally chased the Zigzag because Tanya was her past life. Basically it's like you want to move. Basically it's like, basically it's something that obviously, unfortunately, does happen in life itself, real life itself, that, the way you want to move on with your life is you want to change your name, you want to change your identity, you want to basically act like that version of yourself is dead and buried, and this is the new you, and this is who you are now. And that's how Zigzag is. She's basically saying, look, I know my name, because even Tina later on acknowledges after they go back to the hotel from the visit. Tanya even acknowledged, I mean, not Tanya, but Tina, easy for me to say. I get it confused there. Tina acknowledges that that's kind of a cute name, a beautiful name that Zigzag had. And Zigzag's like, yeah, I know, but that's my old life. I'm Zigzag now. Tanya is no more. So, basically, like I said, getting back to the grandparents, though, and Zigzag's connection with them, you can see, like I said, with the grandfather, he kind of knows what Zigzag does, but the grandmother doesn't. And it's also obvious that, well, it's not obvious, but as a parent, pretty much, I guess you could say, acknowledge that the siblings know. That the siblings know and everything, but they don't watch. They don't watch or anything, at all. Because it's like Brandon basically says, hey, I don't want to watch my sister my little sibling getting plowed, getting shoveled or whatever, something like that. Anyway, she does kind of explain why she's there and everything and all that. Kind of explain to them, why she did, why she's there, what happened. And Brandon at first, he's kind of hostile towards her because he's like, look, you left without telling us. You left us in the shadow of our father. It's like, how can you come back here now and ask for help or something like that? And it takes the grandparents to kind of acknowledge to him and Brandy that Zigzag's gone through a lot more than, they can imagine. And then that's when Zigzag steps in. And this is all in the recent chapters, in the recent past months. This is all taking place in the story. This is where Zigzag steps in. And she's like, look, Brandon, you need to understand why I did what I did. And she goes on to explain that she stayed as long as she could, took the abuse as much as she could, and it's abuse that starts with an S, and I'm not going to say any more than that. She took as much as she could until she couldn't take no more, and she left. But before she did, she made sure that the courts gave custody and guardianship, guardianshipness, if you will, custody and guardianshipness to the grandparents over her siblings. She wanted to make sure they got taken care of and everything, and that the father would not lay a hand on them. And we also find out that when when she arrives, that she's also been sending them she's also been sending them some financial aid, if you will, to help them out, in the long run. She's been sending financial aid their way to help them out, a little money here and there, which they do appreciate. But Brandon is more like, yeah, well, we appreciate it, but I'm more somebody who likes to make my own way, and all that. And, you can't blame someone like Brandon, obviously, that want to do his own thing and everything. Excuse me. But, yeah, basically, that's what they're doing, because after, like I say, the visit, they go back to the hotel to contemplate what the next step's going to be. Because one of the things that the grandmother does ask, she does ask Sabrina, not Sabrina, but Zigzag. I'm getting back to Sabrina in a minute. Sorry, I'm getting confused here. But one of the things that Zigzag's grandmother asked her and everything is she's seen her mother. And Zigzag is, come in contact with her mom. And Zigzag's like, no. And the grandmother's like, are you going to do it? And Zigzag's like, maybe, I'll consider it. Because here's the thing with the mother. The mother basically was not there for them when the father was not there for her or her siblings when the father did what he did. That's why she's a little reluctant about, going and seeing her mother on that side of the family. Because of the fact of what he did, and she's not sure whether or not they'd be accepting to seeing her again, especially if they know what she does for a living. But yeah, the grandmother is asking her if she's talked to her mom, and she says, no, I haven't. And she's like, are you considering it? And Zigzag's like, maybe, or, maybe, I don't know, I'll think about it. And then she even asked the grandmother, because she is contemplating it, is she still at the old house, at the old home? And the grandmother's like, yeah, she's still there. So now we have to wait and see if Zigzag's going to make that step, make that next step and be like, okay, I gotta face this woman, sooner rather than later. Might as well just do it now and get it over with. And we're probably going to see that probably within the next month or so after we wrap up the Sabrina portion of things now, because that's where we are right now. That's where we are right now because, again, after they get back to the hotel, and Tina compliments and Zigzag's real name, Zigzag's real name, Tanya, being, nice and everything. And Zigzag saying, yeah, but that's the old me. I'm not Tanya anymore. I'm Zigzag, and, that's my old life, and, that. So basically, they're contemplating the next step because even, Zigzag's wondering, not Zigzag, but Tina's wondering, are you going to see the mom? Are you going to do it? And Zigzag's like, I'm thinking about it, but I'm not too sure yet. Because again, the mother did not do anything, to stand up to her or her siblings. And you can only imagine the situation there. You can only imagine the situation there, the combustible elements that we could end up, getting. But that's, of course, what leads us to here now. That's what leads us to here now about a year later. That's what leads us to here because basically Sabrina is, taking the advice from her husband. She's, she's going the more calm, casual route, but she's also enticing as well. She's also enticing, her mom to kind of sit down and talk calmly and maturely. And the way she's enticing her is with her favorite dessert, which is caramel turtle cheesecake. And what's funny is that, Sabrina's like, oh, it is your favorite? Because the mom sees it, she's like, that's my favorite. And she's like, oh, it is? Well, I can take it in the kitchen because I can cut some slices and everything. We sit down and talk things over and all that. Because when she arrives, she's wondering, if her mom's better and everything, getting, slowly getting over what happened. And the dad's like, yeah, she's better, but, she hasn't said anything yet about what happened. And then, of course, again, that's when Sabrina entices her with her favorite dessert. And then what's funny is you see the sister going like, well, I want some cheesecake and everything. And the one thing I said in my review of that 50th page is like, about that moment, about that little scene of Tabitha, Sabrina's little sister, going like, oh, I want some cheesecake. I'm thinking, yeah, but you might have to eat it you might have to eat it in your room, Tabitha, because you may not want to be around for the conversation that's about to happen. Because we do get the conversation very calm and everything. And essentially, it just equals to the fact that, or equals up to what's currently going on. And that is the fact that Endora, Endora's kind of confused, is what it is. She's kind of confused because, she basically says in the recent chapter, she was raised a certain way. She was raised to know that a boy and a girl, a man and a woman, are the way to go. And that anything outside of that is wicked and unruly. It's not right. So she's basically saying, look, I don't know what to think right now, because her answer in the page before this one, before the one that dropped yesterday, her answer was basically, she didn't hate it. It's like, she was surprised, she was shocked and everything, but a part of her is like telling her it wasn't that bad. It was actually good. It was actually kind of nice. And thus she's basically, her answer to her mind, part of her mind telling her that is she didn't hate it. Because when that part of your mind is telling you one thing that you shouldn't be admitting to, then that's kind of telling you that maybe you're okay with it after all. That maybe there's a side of you that you didn't think you had, or maybe you did have, but you forgot you had. And honestly, that's probably that's probably the position Endora's in. Maybe she had this side of her inside of her for quite some time, and she hasn't been allowed to let it out. Or maybe when she was younger, she had it, but then she just locked it away when she, met her husband and they had Sabrina and Tabitha. So that could be it too. We don't know. We don't know, but again, for her to come out and said she didn't hate it, she didn't hate the kiss, that's her mind basically telling her, hey, it wasn't that bad. That's part of her mind saying, hey, it wasn't that bad, and everything. It's actually kind of nice, actually kind of fun. It was kind of very experimental. Maybe we could do it again. Things like that. And the thing with Endora is like it's like she doesn't know what the answer she needs is. It's like does she want to acknowledge that she is indeed bi? Does she want to acknowledge that maybe she is bisexual, and everything, and that it's okay for her to be attracted to characters like Zigzag, or is she gonna seek help and everything, seek some therapy, and be like, look, I can't be this way. I gotta not be this way, and how do I prevent it? And I think that's where everything's gonna come into play. Because again, you have Zigzag doing her thing to try to get some answers as to why she does what she does and everything, and hopefully we'll get those answers soon. And with her getting those answers, and Endora kind of contemplating whether or not she could be one way or not, I think it's all going to coincide. It's all going to coincide. I think what's going to happen, because like I said, we are a year in now, believe it or not. But I think what's going to happen is, when it comes down to it, for like the finale, to the story, we're going to have Zigzag and Endora talk. And Zigzag's going to apologize for what she did and probably explain that, hey, this is why I do the things I do, is because, it's just a part of me, because I'm part tiger, and, it's just something I inherited from my family, unfortunately, And maybe, like I said, she'll say something like that, apologize, and even make the promise to try better, not to push herself onto people that, she should know would never, swing that way and all that. And then I can see Endora in return accepting the apology, mending the friendship, and maybe even acknowledge that, she does find Zigzag attractive. She just never knew that she could, be that way, but she doesn't, want to be that way full time. Like, she's going to probably accept that, yeah, when I'm with you, it's okay to kind of lean in that direction, but I don't want to lean in it fully. Like, I'm not going to, I don't want to be I don't want to end up sharing a bed with you and all that and everything. I just, I say I could have little moments here and there. I think that's basically what her acceptance will be. Like, she'll have, little moments here and there, and that's about it. And I think, Zigzag will be cool with that. Like, hey, no problem. We can do things slow and all that. There's no problem. We can take steps. No problem. So I think that's what it'll lead to. It's like the mending of the friendships, and there'll be like a mutual agreement. Like, yeah, if they go and, take that initiative of, okay, kind of going and making Endora sort of bi and everything, mostly when it comes to Zigzag, or especially just with Zigzag, I think that could make for an intriguing, I guess you could say, story going forward. But, we'll have to see. And, and I wouldn't be surprised if for comedic effect to kind of end the story on a very humorous note. I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to end, if this is what they wanted to do to end the story on a humorous note. Have them mend the fences, kind of agree to kind of maybe take it slow if that's the direction they're going to do. But I would not be surprised if they ended in a humorous way with Endora surprising Zigzag with a kiss on the lips to kind of show her, like, yeah, I'm willing to, accept, as kind of being a little bit more than friends, but taking our time and consider that the first step, I could see that happening. It'll make things interesting, there's no doubt, if they do that. But it all depends on the direction Eric is taking Zigzag in the story to find out the answers she needs, as well as Endora trying to find the answer of whether or not whether or not she will accept that maybe she is now a little bi, or maybe she's been bi, she just never knew it, or she has been bi, she's just forgotten that she, was a long time ago and she hid it away. Hopefully we'll get something that, convenes together in the end when it comes to the story. But overall, for the past year, it's been good. It's been really good, and I highly recommend, if you guys have not read this story, do yourself a favor. Go to sabrinaonline.com, go to sabrinaonline.com or sabrina-online.com, and also go to Patreon for $1, and you'll be able to catch up with the story on Eric W. Stewart's Patreon page and the Sabrina Online page. And I guarantee you, when you catch up with it, it's going to take time. It's a year's worth of story so far, but I guarantee you, when you catch up to it, you're going to be like, wow, that is interesting. And you yourself might be coming up with your own theories and speculations as to where you think they're going to take the story next in the future. But like I said, I think when it's all said and done, we are going to get a spin-off in Fur After Dark. We're going to get a side story, spin-off side story in Fur After Dark. It's just going to be Zigzag and Tina and doing their thing while they're on the road and stopping at hotels and all that. Or maybe it's Endora and Zigzag to, just get it out of the way, just, get it done with. So that way, they took that step and everything, and now they could just, slowly just interact tiny bit here and there, now that they got that out of the system. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. How do you feel about it so far? If you've been reading and paying attention to the series, what are your thoughts so far on it? Where do you think the direction is going to head toward the story for both characters is going to head next? Do you think Endora is going to accept that maybe she is bi, she just didn't know it, or she forgot she was, and because she locked it away, so long ago when she married? Let me know what your thoughts are. What do you think she's going to do? And do you think, we're going to find out from Zigzag that maybe she gets her whole predatorial, wanting to be the alpha female and all that when it comes to relationships and wanting to pounce and everything? Do you think we'll find out she gets it from maybe the father, unfortunately, or at least from her mother? Let me know what your thoughts are. Or do you think maybe we'll find out she just gets it because she's part tiger? Who knows? Because she's got that tiger blood, as the grandfather said in one of the strips, one of the comic pages about a month ago. Let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are on that and everything. And do you think when they do convene to end the story that there will be that kind of mutual agreement of, yeah, if they go in the direction with Endora that people think they might, that it'll just be like a step-by-step thing, but Endora, to end it on a humorous note, will give, Zigzag a taste of her own medicine by kissing her, and surprising her. Let me know what your thoughts are. And do you think maybe if they do some Fur After Dark side stories based around this, what do you think it will be? Do you think it'll just be a Tina and Zigzag one while they're on the road? Or do you think it'll be something between Endora and Zigzag to kind of get it out of the system before they go and do the whole slow step-by-step thing and all that? Let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Love to hear what you have to say on this. And as always, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, and also, guys, check me out on all your favorite audio and video podcast affiliates. You can find me over at iTunes, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Audible from Amazon, Radio Public, Overcast. Anywhere that is a podcast, you will find mine there. You can also find me over at rumble.com at BW Roses, odyssey.com at BW Roses-5. You can also find me at deviantart.com at BVW1979. You can also find me at VENMO at BW Roses, inkbunny.net at BW Roses. You can also find me at patreon.com at BW Roses. I now have a new video up in the $3 and $5 tier. talking about adult film actor or actress Kira Reed, if you will. So you can find that there. And you can also support me with a $1 tip if you like. Also, guys, you can support me through Venmo and Cash App. It's greatly appreciated. And you can also follow me at twitter.com BWRoses or x.com at BWRoses. You can also find me at bluesky.com at BWRoses. And you can find me at TikTok at BWRoses. I also have a twitch.tv. You can check me out there. I have to restart that again soon in the future. And you can also find me at kick.com as well. But guys, give me your thoughts overall. And so far, you know, the story's been a real banger in my opinion, been really good. And hope to see it progress even more as the year goes on. Who knows? This might end up being a 2-year story. I don't think so. I think now that we're kind of getting some kind of clarification with Endora, or getting there at least, and then Zigzag obviously being next on the list, I think we'll probably be done with this story within the next, I would say, 28, I wouldn't say 28, maybe 28 or 30, I would say about 33 weeks. I'd say the next 33 weeks, almost the end of the year, I'd say we'll be done with this story. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are, and until then, I am out. Take care. God bless.